I had a debate with Dave Smith a little while back, and one of the sticking points he kept trying to like sort of end off with was, ultimately, we have to ask ourselves, does Israel have to do this? Like, he's looking at the optics. It's always horrible. It's always difficult to watch, especially a war like this that's kind of unprecedented in how much it's been broadcast on such a wide scale, not just in mainstream news, but social media. And his question ultimately is, does Israel have to do this? And recently this came up again. He's like Israel doesn't have to do this. And then I like, we had a Twitter exchange and I was like, well, ultimately, if it can be demonstrated to you that Israel does have to do this, then you might be more pro-Israel than you think. It might just be a choice between bad and worse. But for you, looking at it from your perspective with your background, seeing what's going on in Gaza and seeing the destruction, you're seeing what's happened and how Israel's conducted itself over the last 18 months. Are there no other options? Does Israel have to do this? Dave said they could send in special forces. They could do this. And I'm like, what do you think they do? Like, I have a cousin who went in to try to rescue hostages. Like, what do you think that is? So can you just shed some light on that as somebody who sees the situation? Like, what do you see?
Yeah, this is the part where I get into what I refer to as people conducting Excel spreadsheet warfare, which is to say that they take two military forces or two combatant forces, and they kind of like add up within the various columns the, manpower and equipment and training and technology and all these other things. And then they compare it to another one. And then when you look at those two columns, you're like, oh my gosh, this side is just like overwhelmingly more powerful than this side. Why is it requiring all this devastation in order to conduct operations? But the problem is that we're not talking about two columns on Excel spreadsheets fighting. We're talking about flesh and blood human beings. And then we're also talking about things like asymmetric warfare. So Hamas is very much aware that the IDF can kick the living hell out of them. Like, they know this, right? They're not confused. They didn't go in October 7th thinking, yes, and after this, Jerusalem will fall and all the, they didn't think that. And so you have to look at like, okay, if Hamas understands that conducting operations in a particular way is going to generate a response, what is their objective? What are they trying to achieve? And the other thing that you've got to take into account is the example I like to use. Okay, like I will give you, I don't say this to be, I'm not saying this to try to be like braggadocious or anything like that, but I'll just list off some of my training just so people have a frame of reference for what I've gone through. So I've been through infantry training, airborne training, air assault training, EMT training, sniper training, ranger school, special forces qualification course, SFAUC, which is special forces, urban assault course. I've also been through Sephardic, which is a premier close quarters battle and hostage rescue course. I've been through, close air support training, and I've been to combat.
Did you know that Dave Smith opened for Skankfest?
So the only reason I say that is because I understand something about the training that goes into it. And if you put me on an Excel spreadsheet against a 14-year-old boy with an AK-47, there's no question who wins that fight, right? But now you put the 14-year-old boy firing through a second-story roof, right? And as I'm walking down the middle of the street with or not the middle of the street, but on the side of the street, right? Like, I'm walking down tactically. I'm following all the rules. The problem is there's one way to walk down, right? Like, there's no secret cloaking device that I possess, and bullets still kill me. Well, yeah, that 14-year-old kid now spraying AK-47 rounds down that narrow, corridor, I might lose that fight. Why? Because that's asymmetric warfare, right? He's not coming right out and challenging me to a duel. He's putting himself in the best position to be able to take advantage of his situation and also take advantage of the limitations I have with respect to how to get to where I need to go.
So just to clarify, because this was used in my conversation with Dave, it was a debate, but he used, you're right, this is an asymmetric war. But when you say asymmetric, you don't mean a power differential, you mean a values differential, right?
Well, no, there's two things. There's a power differential in the sense that if I've got to fight you and I'm significantly weaker than you, then what I'm looking for is, how do I put you in a situation where I can balance out the odds, right? Well, again, there's a reason why after October 7th, Hamas wasn't launching, raids into Jerusalem, right? Why? Well, because they would have gotten their ass kicked. So what are they doing? Well, okay, I've done something which I know is going to generate a response. And what I'm going to try to do now is I'm going to try to get you to come into places for which I have an advantage. And again, if you've got to clear buildings, which is one of the most dangerous things to do, urban combat is one of the most dangerous, environments. Well, then I can set up all sorts of scenarios where your training, your equipment, your night vision, all that stuff has now been mitigated to some degree, right? It's no longer, it's still there, it's still a factor, but now I've mitigated it because you've got to walk down the road. And if you're actually concerned about civilian casualties, oh gosh, now I've got this whole other environment that I can now create where I've got a bunch of civilians, or I've got a bunch of fighters and civilians basically wearing the same sort of like clothing, civilian clothing. What makes someone a non-combatant versus a combatant?
We don't know.
In that scenario, especially when you're fighting an enemy that they don't look at it the same way you do, that's the asymmetric component in values.
Right.
Well, if they don't consider arming the 14-year-old or the 12-year-old or the 8-year-old, or if they don't consider hiding behind them to be immoral or wrong, and here's the key part. This is something that I've brought up before that I've never personally seen Dave address. And if the outside world is going to punish me as the guy that's trying to just go after combatants, that's all I'm interested in. I don't want to hurt the 12-year-old girl. I don't want to hurt the 14-year-old boy. I just want to go after combatants. But if every time my enemy puts a 12-year-old or a 14-year-old or an 8-year-old into a situation where they get killed, my enemy gets punished, even though I'm the one that put him in that situation, well, now you've provided an incentive for me to do that. And this is the part that I'm looking at some of these people going, if you were that concerned about civilian casualties, I have no problem with you critiquing things that the IDF does and asking questions on whether they could do it better, whether or not they could be more surgical. But you also have to ask the questions is the civilian body count, first of all, are we really getting accurate numbers from Hamas? Secondly, is the civilian body count really a reflection of Israel just not caring about what happens and doing whatever they want? Or is it a reflection of Hamas using very, very specific tactics in order to gain a particular advantage? And one of the things that terrorist organizations, one of the things that enemies of the United States have used in the past, and I use the Tet Offensive as an example of this, you don't beat a military that is significantly better than you. Right. What you do is you win the larger propaganda war, and you get the politicians in that country to pull the military back.
This was Vietnam, how it ended up?
Yes. The Tet Offensive was this massive defeat for the Viet Cong and essentially wiped out the Viet Cong. But if you were to watch the news in America, you would have thought that, oh my gosh, we've all been lied to. And quite frankly, there were a lot of misinformation.
It's like Jesse Ventura. You ever heard of the Gulf of Tonkin?
Yeah. There was problems, right? I'm not saying that, but the Tet Offensive was not a strategic victory for the Viet Cong.
Right.
It did become a massive propaganda victory.
And the public perception ultimately does decide politics.
Yes.
Once the threshold is too much.
Yes. And especially in representative governments. In representative government, you defeat the voter, not the military, right? If you can defeat the voter, the military gets redeployed or brought home.